Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, I'm just curious. I go back to where I learned with a pen and pencil to begin with as well, and we did not have a quill at that time, but we did have number 2 lead. And as I get into this and learn more about this thing, it's fascinating to see how quickly things are moving, and yet everything that we talk about seems to translate back into dollars and cents yet. That has not changed until now. And suddenly we're talking about a new type of exchange, and it sounds almost like bartering to me. And it's a bartering which could avoid the determination of a value in dollars and cents, which brings up the question of how do you tax it if you need to? How do you recognize income? But also, in this particular case, I noticed both of you identified that you have additional, or you have existing resources and regulatory oversight capabilities that you are utilizing today. And while I question whether or not there are seams that have to be filled, it would appear that some basics that maybe a lot of us don't quite understand still have to be answered. And I just want to just start out because I think, Mr. Clayton, you started with this discussion with regard to the issue of whether or not you had control over an ICO, and the fact that if they were issuing, in this particular case, Bitcoin or the opportunity to market it, you had identified it as a stock or at least a value of something. What is, in this particular case, that thread that you utilize once again, and can you delve into that a little bit more about how your agency responds to the regulatory need in this particular case? What is the specific item that you look at as being an item which is subject to your review? A security in what?
The definition of a security is broad, and it includes. I'm going to not use the technical terms. There's Supreme Court cases and things like that, but it includes if you are offering me a security or offering me something, a coin, and I give you money, and the purpose of me giving you that money is to profit from your efforts going forward. So if I give you money, and you give me a coin, and you say I'm going to take the money and I'm going to grow a business, and that's going to increase the value of that coin. And by the way, Chairman Clayton, you can trade it to somebody else. So you may be able to get value for it tomorrow. In fact, you probably will get value for it tomorrow. Buy now so you can get more value for it in a few days. That's a security.
So commodity-wise, if we're looking at trading commodities, you would not have an interest in the subject of investigating or reviewing whether or not the trading of an ag commodity was something. And yet, when we talk about the CFTC, we're talking about a different story where commodities most certainly are an item of interest to you. Is Bitcoin, or are these as currently being traded, are they a commodity, or are they a security, or are they both?
What's so challenging about Bitcoin is it has characteristics of multiple different things. One of the phrases that's often used is that Bitcoin is a medium of exchange, a store of value, or a means of account. Well, those three things have different connotations to them. If it's a medium of exchange, then it's like a currency-like instrument. And yet, as we've seen, a number of means of exchanges have been closed to Bitcoin. There was recently a Bitcoin conference that stopped accepting Bitcoin for registrants because they couldn't process the payments. So, but yet it's still spoken of as perhaps a means of account. And in that case, it has implications from the Fed and currency. From our point of view, when it's used as a store of value, then it's very much like an asset, like a commodity. And in fact, what we hear a lot of is people buying and holding. If you go onto the Twitter universe, you'll see a phrase HODL, which means hold on for dear life. And the thinking is that they buy it and hold it. In fact, I mentioned in my opening remarks my 30-year-old niece who bought Bitcoin years ago, and she's an HODL. She says, I'm going to own it. I don't know what's going to come of it, but I want to hang on to it. And she's not a fraudster or a manipulator. She's just a kid and believes in it. And, you know, I was fascinated talking to her. And I think she represents a lot of folks that think there's something in this, I want to hold on to it. And so in that regard, from our point of view, it's a commodity. And if there's a derivative on that, we regulate it. The problem is, in the cash market, we don't have regulatory authority, means we can't set the standards. But what we will do, and we are doing, is looking for fraud and manipulation. And we intend to be very aggressive, if nothing else, so that people like my niece can have some security that there's not fraudsters and manipulators out there, and there are far too many of them.
I think, Mr. Chairman, your suggestion earlier that we bring them both back in at a later date after they've had an opportunity to look at the differences would be very appropriate. Thank you, gentlemen.